meet our special guest today here on Jane Unchained Live Talk. We're here with Will Lowrey, who is an attorney for the incredible organization Compassion Over Killing. This is an urgent call to stop this high-speed slaughter that could become basically the law of the land in December, in just a few days, if we Americans don't stand up and do something about it. If you did to a dog like my little Rico here for 1 second, what they plan with this high-speed slaughter to do to millions, and indeed over the years, billions of pigs who are smarter than dogs, you'd be arrested and thrown in jail. Will Lowrey, as the attorney for Compassion Over Killing, what would you say to people to get them to call their U.S. senators and their members of Congress immediately, and what should they say?
Well, Jane, we first of all appreciate you having us on today. I think this is a super important issue, and most definitely would ask people to call both Congress and Senate. And so what essentially is happening is that the USDA has promoted a new rule that will basically, what they say, modernize the slaughter of pigs. And a couple of the concerns from an animal welfare perspective, first and foremost, it is basically removing any line speed caps. And what that means in layman's terms is that these slaughter plants can operate as fast as they want. They can run as many pigs through the process as they can possibly do to maximize profit. Currently, plants are operating under 1,100 pigs per hour, or with an exception, 1,300 pigs per hour. So if you think about the magnitude of those numbers, and then you think about removing any cap whatsoever, and then try to translate to the individual pigs coming through those plants and what that means to them in capacity of suffering. Compassion Over Killing did an investigation in 2015. I would encourage folks that are interested to learn more about this issue to look at our investigation. It was on one of these plants in Minnesota that was operating at high line speeds. And we saw all sorts of egregious cruelty, things like pigs that could not walk being dragged by hooks, pigs being beaten with paddles, being pushed so hard that they're climbing over each other, pigs that are not effectively stunned, that are still alive when they go through the scalding bath. And so, Jane, to your question, I would encourage folks, one, to educate yourselves about the issue and try to understand the reality of life for a pig in a slaughter plant that has no cap. And then two, to your request, call your senator, call your representative, call them today, ask them. There is essentially an amendment that's on the table that the Senate and the House are discussing that would prohibit funding to this new rule. Call your senator, call your congressman today, tell them that you are concerned about this removal of line speed caps and that you want them to block funding to this rule. That's the request for folks today.
And the thing that we want the members of Congress, senators and Congress members to approve is the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. It is there on your screen right now, DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. And I called my U.S. senators yesterday, and they were extremely, extremely pleasant. The representatives who answer the phone, I always try to get a real person. By the way, Liliana says, this is incredibly upsetting. Thank you for speaking for the voiceless. But this is your turn, Liliana, to speak. We have a link, which we will put up here right now. That's the investigation, which will give you nightmares. But this is the link to find your member of Congress. Frankly, I keep my member of Congress, Ted Lieu, who is a very big animal supporter, on my phone all time so that I don't have to, reinvent the wheel every time I want to call my U.S. senators. Obviously, my senators here in California, Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris, I spoke to people, human beings in both of their offices yesterday. And this is what I said. I said, this high-speed slaughter is horrific. Please tell your boss to support and it's right here, DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. They were extremely happy to hear from me. They want to hear this information. They want to know how their constituents feel. So if you feel like you're doing something that's upsetting, no, quite the opposite. The people who answer the phones wouldn't have jobs if you didn't call. So right now, I'm going to do something. Now, I'm going to call Ted Lieu's office. We are in a two-party consent state, so I can't put whoever answers the phone on, but I can just give you an example, however imperfect, of me calling, because it's that important. Millions of pigs are going to be tortured and subjected to nightmarish horrors that epitomize the moral bankruptcy of our attitude with factory farming today if we don't take action. And I know that Compassion Over Killing, you submitted how many signatures to, what was it, the USDA?
Yeah, we have petitions out there with hundreds of thousands of signatures. I mean, this is an issue that the public is resoundingly behind. I think it's easy with federal law just to think it's a lot of black and white words on a piece of paper. But when people really and truly understand the issues that are happening, when they see the footage, and when they just stop to think about the cruelty that's inherent to plants that are running to maximize profit, I think the issue becomes real. And to your point, we have hundreds of thousands of signatures on our petitions that have asked Congress to pass this amendment, and we would love for more of your viewers to call today.
So we've got Mary Angela Branch says, here and sharing, calling my reps and senators today. Thank you, Mary Angela Branch. Please do so. Liliana Candelario says, will do. Please do. I did. My U.S. senators, I clicked on the link that we provide, that you provided to me. I clicked on it within 2 seconds. I got my U.S. senators and I called the numbers. And then you just, you try to get a human being. So I'm going to call right now Ted Lieu, who is a great friend of the animals. I'm going to call his office and give you an example of what you can do because it's that important. And I never ask people to do something I'm not going to do. Hello? Yes, hi. My name is Jane Velez Mitchell. I'm actually doing a live video right now, and I know that Congressman Ted Lieu is a big friend of the animals. And I am calling to urge him strongly to please, please, please work hard to pass the DeLauro. Let me get it right now. I'm trying to get the actual name so we get it right. The DeLauro, what is it again?
DeLauro-Price Amendment.
DeLauro-Price Pig Provision. That's what we need. The DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. It is an amendment that will stop this horrific high-speed slaughter that's supposed to go into effect in December. It would stop funding. And honestly, the video is the stuff of nightmares where they are killing these pigs every 5 seconds. It's completely horrific. It's an embarrassment for us as a nation to be committing this horrific violence on these innocent animals. And there is a provision that the U.S. Senate and the Congress are working to block funding for this, and it's called the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. And I really, really urge you to tell Congressman Lieu, who I know is a big animal lover, to fight like heck to get that provision passed into the law as they figure out the funding. Sure, 90292. Thank you. Yes, you too. So yes, that was not perfect because I couldn't find the exact thing here, even though I'm wearing glasses. But you know what? It's never going to be perfect. She was very happy to hear my comments. What would you say about the call? Critique the call so that we can get people to be calling. There it is right now on the screen. It's called the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. Yeah, critique the call, please.
I think the call was fine. I think, I don't want folks to get too nervous as far as saying the exact right words. I think it's definitely helpful to say the provision, but send the message thoughtfully, respectfully, and politely, and just let your representative or your Senate member know that you are aware of this issue, that you are a constituent, and that you feel the issue is a gross, abuse of animals. And it's not, if you want to talk about issues other than animals, I think all of your viewers are concerned about animals. There are worker safety issues, there are food safety issues, and feel free to mention that. I think the key point is call, make the call. Don't be too nervous about what to say that you're not going to call. Make the call, reference the DeLauro-Price Amendment. You can talk about high-speed pig slaughter, and just politely say that you are aware of what is about to happen if this rule passes. You've seen the video, you care about animals, and you strongly urge your representative or Senate member to pass this amendment and block funding. And so I think that's the gist of it. I think the call is good, and everybody saw how quick it was for Jane to make that call. And the one thing I would add to that is that, there are a lot of issues that we petition for and campaign for that impact, a small number of animals. this is an amendment that will completely, or if this amendment doesn't pass, the caps will be reduced. And so you will have slaughter plants across this country. You know, the plant that we investigated in Minnesota was killing 19,000 pigs a day, I believe. And so you're talking about thousands and thousands of pigs every day that will be impacted by this. And so the magnitude of your impact for taking just a few moments of your time is huge. So I would strongly encourage people to make the call just like Jane did.
Listen, everybody here is saying they will call, and it's really important to follow through. What I find is that there's a moment where people feel inspired to call. Hang up. I don't care if you watch this video. Get out of this video and make the call right now, because what happens is, I got some mail, or I got to make this, or I got to do this, that, and the other. So do it now. Do it now. Do it today. This is the most important thing you can do for animals. We are at a turning point in this country. If we proceed with this high-speed slaughter, it will signal complete and utter moral bankruptcy of our nation. That's what I would say. A nation that is capable of doing this to pigs, who, as I mentioned, are far smarter than dogs, like the dogs that we love and have at home, like little Rico. These pigs have the emotional and mental development of toddler human children. They make nests. That has been documented. They use tools to make nests. They use tools. There was just a huge article about the intelligence of pigs and how they use tools. And we are doing this to pigs, killing them at such a fast rate that they're literally alive as they're being dragged. I saw the video. The video is right here. If you need to have any confirmation of how barbaric, how morally bankrupt, how pure evil this proposal is, to increase the speeds and basically say to the companies, you decide, you can kill them as fast as you want, you know? And you can look at the video right here. I'll tell you something, go to sleep early, because you're going to be up all night with nightmares. Okay? So instead, here is the link. You find your members of Congress, your U.S. senators, 2 U.S. senators, and I've now reached out to all 3. And, I never asked somebody to do something and I haven't done. You heard me call the congressman. Yesterday, I called my U.S. senators. They were delighted to hear. They want to hear. They need to know how their constituents feel about issues in order to make this decision. And so here, Mary Beth Wood Olson says, in D.C., call Chris Van Hollen Jr., Senator for Maryland, and she's got his number right up there. Now, people are all over the country watching this, so wherever they are, I know Sarah Segal is in Atlanta. You call your Atlanta senators. But we need to call them, and we need to say, stop high-speed slaughter. And we also need to say, please approve the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision that would stop the funding for this. So can you explain to folks who may not know how the funding and the bill that we're talking about and how it ends up getting decided, that, the House creates a bill, the Senate creates a bill, then they get together and they work out sort of the kinks and they come to an agreement of what that legislation is going to be then move forward to be signed into law by the president.
Yeah, and so what happened in this case is that Representatives DeLauro and Price, and I would note that Representative Price is from North Carolina, one of the largest pork producing states in the country. And so you have somebody from one of those states where that industry literally means everything, who recognizes what a severe issue this is. And so to your question, Jane, what essentially happened was in June, the House passed the Agricultural Appropriations Bill for 2020 and included this amendment. And so it made it out of the House. Unfortunately, in September, it was not included in the Senate bill. And so what's essentially happening now is the House and the Senate are conferencing. And to your point, Jane, they're getting together, they're working out the kinks, trying to figure out what gets in the final bill. With our system of government, there needs to be interaction between both the House and the Senate. And so what the situation we're in now is that they're interacting, they're in conference and discussing what makes it into the final bill. And at some point that bill will be finalized, and it will or it will not have this language. And what folks are calling and asking for is for the final bill that the House and Senate agree to have that language. And so you are urging your representatives, your Senate members, as they are in those conference, you are urging them that this is important. They should consider it such that when they come out of that conference, this language makes it into the final bill. And essentially what it will do is it will defund the new rule that will allow this high-speed slaughter. And I also want to note, it's that bill or the new rule by USDA is not just about high-speed slaughter. That's one of the most egregious issues. There are other concerns with that bill where it's actually removing USDA inspectors from parts of the process that may put more animals at risk, such as animals that are downers and can't walk. You know, it may raise food safety concerns. There's a host of issues with this, but to your question, we're at the stage where Congress and the House are conferencing, discussing what will make it into the final bill. This is sort of the end of the process, and that's why it's so important for people to literally get on the phone today and make that call and urge them to pass that amendment, which will defund that bill.
Now, let me ask you, you talk about health concerns, so I would assume this is already, you know, we've got a pig virus sweeping through Asia that is killing millions. They say culling, which is killing millions and millions and millions of pigs. This is a huge, huge issue. And of course, most soy is produced to feed pigs. So it's a global impact. And in fact, you know, the Chinese government has said they want to reduce meat consumption by 50% because of the horrific environmental, the disastrous environmental impact of animal agriculture on climate change. A new white paper just came out that says that animal agriculture is responsible not for 14.5% of greenhouse gas emissions, but 87%. So wouldn't you think that environmental groups and food safety groups would jump on and also try to stop this, so it's not just a case of animal cruelty, which to me, you know, that's just as important as anything else, if not more important. To unnecessarily torture these animals is morally reprehensible. But wouldn't you think that other groups that are not concerned with animals, like groups that are concerned with the environment and with food safety, would be jumping on this to say stop?
Yeah, most definitely would agree with that. I mean, this is the type of rule that USDA is trying to enact that has wide opposition. And so while, you know, all your viewers are probably animal supporters, like I said, there are other issues that go along with this. There are food safety concerns. You know, our investigator in 2015 saw things like, you know, pig carcasses riddled with bumps and tumors and, you know, green or yellow pus coming out of them, contaminated with fecal matter. I mean, this is your food source. You know, this is a plant that is providing food to the American consumer. And so if you don't care about animal issues, you might care about food issues. If you don't care about either of those issues, you can think about the environmental issues like you talked about. You know, if you think about, you know, climate change and some of the current impacts, and then just removing line caps such that plants are producing more and more meat products and polluting the environment more and more. And if you don't care about any of that, think about the worker issues. I mean, there's already been a suit filed in a district court in Minnesota by some of the worker union groups. So if you put yourself in the shoes of a worker trying to process that fast, then people are already processing, slaughtering pigs at 1,300 per hour. Take off those caps and imagine the workers trying to go through that process and the injuries that they may experience. So to your point, there are multiple issues. I mean, COK is obviously most focused on the animal issue. That's the one that we feel is extremely important. But there are other issues from environment, food safety, worker issues. So I think there's a broad constituency of people that are opposing this.
Are other groups, though, coming out and urging their members to call?
I have seen some other alerts. You know, it's my understanding that there are other groups. Like I said, I know that some of the union groups have already filed a lawsuit from a worker injury perspective. I think other groups are concerned. I can't really speak to their approach or tactics, right. But there is definite awareness of the multiplicity of issues here. But it certainly doesn't hurt to shine a focus on that this is not just a welfare issue. You know, if somebody wants to cast us as, you know, oh, we're radical or softies, we care about the animals, you know, I first of all disagree with that. Second of all, point to the other impacts of this bill. One of the big drivers for the DeLauro-Price amendment was actually related to worker safety. Congresswoman DeLauro was questioning some of the data that went into the actual final rule, and there were some peer review studies done of a risk assessment that said the data and the conclusions were faulty. And so a lot of the drivers for this do touch on other areas, but obviously there's a huge animal welfare impact as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, factory farming is morally reprehensible. People say, oh, this is tradition. No, it's not. It's very, very, very recent in human history that we have been keeping animals in giant warehouses where they don't see the sky and where their only moment of touching anything than their own feces is a ride to the slaughterhouse. And even then they're covered in their own feces. This is, a morally bankrupt system, and people are becoming aware of it. They're also becoming aware of the environmental impact of animal agriculture. You see it every single day. You see a new article or several new articles, not only touting meat alternatives, but talking about the environmental impact of animal agriculture. People are waking up. So I would think that this would be a giant step in the wrong direction, a giant step backward, almost like a desperation move by the industry to try to sort of make up for changing consumer tastes and changing societal values. This cannot stand. I am telling everybody, the most important thing you can do for the animals. Many people watching are people who've been involved with animal rescue for decades. This is the most important call you will ever make. 3 calls, your 2 U.S. senators and your member of Congress. I did it. It took less than 5 minutes to call my 2 U.S. senators. We are providing a link, and you just say, high-speed slaughter is terrible. It's morally bankrupt. Our nation is better than this. When you are dealing with the bill that they're putting together now, we urge you to approve the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision, which would remove funding for this horrific high-speed slaughter. So we got Mary Beth Wood Olson just called in, done and done. I would love to hear somebody else comment that they have made these calls. This is super important. Again, the time is now. This is not something to do in a week. In a week, it's going to be December, and these pigs will start being slaughtered at this high speed, and we will be hitting a point, I believe, of no return if that happens, where we have really lost any moral standing in the world to say anything to anybody. We can't point the finger at Asia for the dog meat trade if we're doing something that's just as cruel, if not crueler, in terms of the number of animals that are being subjected to this horror. Our nation is so much better than this. And, I want to ask, who is behind this? I mean, is it just the industry, Will?
I mean, obviously the industry is behind it. I mean, there's been a government push for quite a while now to quote unquote modernize the animal agriculture industry. I mean, this is an issue that we're seeing in other areas, like for example in the poultry industry. There's been some rules and some waivers passed to basically allow increased line speeds in that area as well. And so there's a big push just in general to increase production, to provide more or basically shift oversight from the federal government to the individual plants. And you can speculate all day as to what's behind that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it seems obviously geared towards production, towards profits. And what's being forgotten in that equation is essentially the implications that has to animals, to workers, the environment. And so that's why it's so important for people to call today.
Yes. Now, people are saying will do. I would love to hear from somebody who has actually called. We have Mary Beth Olson who has. James Tenbrook Madison said, I will call today. Thank you so much. And of course, Compassion Over Killing, which you are the attorney for Compassion Over Killing, an incredible organization that has taken the lead on this and which has really sent out emails. How did I find out about this? Because of an email that I got from Compassion Over Killing. And of course, I looked at it in horror. And one thing I do is when I get directions from organizations that I respect, I take action immediately. So I called And then I was like, wow, you know, everybody who loves animals needs to be calling all around the country. The way these things work is that if they feel like they can't get away with it, they won't go. They won't do it. If the Ted Liew's, the animal lovers in Congress and in the Senate, make a point of saying, no, this won't stand, it won't stand. But they need to get those calls in order to make that stand. I have seen it not only with national politics, but I've seen it also with legislation and bills that we try to pass here in California. They literally count the phone calls. It's not even so much what you say, it's that call coming in, and they literally say in their meeting, you know, this high-speed slaughter, we're getting a lot of calls on it. The people are really upset. Okay, I'll make sure that that's the calculation. That's how it happens. So don't worry about every last little word. Just get in there, make those calls, and urge your representatives to stop high-speed slaughter by approving the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. Now, you'd say that's a mouthful. Well, it's two members of Congress, DeLauro and Price, that put this provision in, and it's a pig slaughter provision that stops the funding. So who is it a senator and a Congress member? Tell us who DeLauro and Price are.
DeLauro and Price are House of Representatives members, and so they're the ones that originally passed the amendment. And so, like you said before, I think, you know, important to remember that name. I think that will help, but I think this issue has gotten a lot of traction such that if you were to call and just mention that you have concerns about high-speed pig slaughter, people would know what you're talking about. But definitely helpful if you can remember the name of the amendment.
So look, people come and go to these conversations on Facebook. I am urging you right now, we need you to call this very second. Mary Beth Wood Olson is saying in DC, you can call Chris Van Hollen Jr., the junior senator for Maryland, and there's his phone number on the screen. Now, what you can do is Jane Unchained News in the comment section, and as soon as we're done, we're going to put it in the body of it. Members of Congress, congressional district map. It's basically a link that you just click on the link right here, boom, govtrack.us/Congress/members/map. A map comes up, you click on your area, and boom, your U.S. senators come up. There are 2 U.S. senators you can call. There's 2 for each state, and then you can call your member of Congress. And I've done all 3, so I'm not asking anybody to do anything that I haven't done. But this is what I know about human nature. You could say, we'll call later, okay? But the time is now. The moment of truth is now. If you love animals, if you are going to take the time today to walk your dog or feed your dog, I hate to say it because my dog loves to eat. This is more important, okay? And it's not a choice. But what I'm trying to say is don't postpone it and say you're going to do it later, because later often doesn't come, okay? If you're outraged, if you don't want to see downed pigs dragged to their deaths, squirming and squealing, if you don't want to have that gnawing feeling in your stomach, oh, wow, I said I was going to call and I got sidetracked with work and with this, that, and the other, and I didn't call, then call now. And Sarah Segal says, she basically says that she posted who to call in Georgia. It took me 3 minutes. She made the call. And so we need everybody, just literally. Erica Meyer, who is the head of your incredible organization, your phone call could be Pig's Last Hope. There's a link to your petition that has all the links as well to how you can find out who your U.S. senators are. But I mean, look, I know the senators off the top of my head. Here it's Dianne Feinstein and it's Kamala Harris. So I literally could Google Kamala Harris phone number, Dianne Feinstein phone number in my Google, and their numbers would pop up. You have them in California. You also have them in DC. This is true for everybody around the country. If you remember your U.S. senator, just put it in Google and say such and such senator phone number, and that number will come up. You could just call like that. So that's one of the easiest ways. But right here we have this map too, and you go on the map. What I would suggest is put them in your phone so that you have these numbers available the next time you need to call. Terri Lewis says, we need you to call now, please. Look, we cover a lot of issues here on Jane Unchained. I have to tell you that in terms of animal suffering, this is the most important call you could make this year. I say it unequivocally, no matter what else is happening. Pigs are one of the smartest animals, not that that should matter, but they are being tortured by the billions. And this is going to make it even worse, much worse. This will signal really just legalize carnage, legalize slaughter, torture. There's no way to overemphasize how horrible this is. You can watch the investigation. The link is right up there in the comment section. I would really like to keep this going until we have someone who says, I just called. And when we get that comment that somebody just called, then we can wrap it up. But I would, as much as I like people saying Dolly in Texas, if you're still watching, I would like you to make the calls right now and then get back to me with a comment, because we need people to do it now. Not say I'm going to do it. I want people to do it right now. And we have made those calls. It's very easy for you to get to your members of Congress and to your U.S. senators. And as much as I love seeing these comments that I'm going to call today, I know human nature. I do know human nature. The time is now. These animals have no voice. They have no advocates. There are very few laws that protect them. And most of those laws are completely overlooked. And what's going to make it even worse is that once this goes into effect, the actual slaughterhouses are going to be in charge of monitoring. It's like a self-monitoring system. So it's just going to be, I don't even know what word could I use, because you're an attorney. You have a tendency to speak in calm, reasoned language. But to me, when I saw the video, it is the video of nightmares, of something that we will look back in history and say, how could we have done this? You know how we could do it? When people don't call. If you find it morally reprehensible, stop what you're doing right now and make that call. Okay? And Erica Meyer is providing a sample script. Hi, my name is, and I'm urging Senator or Representative to approve the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision in the 2020 Appropriations Bill. The USDA's reckless high-speed slaughter program will put millions of consumers, workers, and pigs on the line by obliterating slaughter speed caps and giving the profit-driven industry a free pass to inspect itself. A 2015 Compassion Over Killing investigation of a model plant for this program exposed its dangers, including workers beating, shocking, and dragging animals as they struggled to keep up with the high speeds. Pigs covered in feces and pus-filled abscesses processed for human consumption with a USDA inspection seal of approval. Please stop this cruel program by approving the amendment. Thank you. Okay? And you can let Compassion Over Killing know how your call went. You can email them at campaigns@cok.net. This is, I'm going to put this up so you can take it in. It's that important. Because here's the truth. We can all beat our chests about the horror of what's happening to animals in industrialized agriculture. But the only thing that is necessary for this evil to triumph is to paraphrase a famous saying, for good people to do nothing. So Christy DeMaria called, and Feinstein's office said that she's a big supporter of animals and the safety of our food system. Christy, well done. Well done. That is, thank you so much for calling. We need more folks. BB Gellert also said, thank you, Sarah Segal. Both senators called. Wow. This is good. We're starting to see more people saying they're actually making the call. And, you know, I would probably say at this point, okay, let's end this. We've established that this is a big problem. But the truth is that one more phone call could be the phone call that made all the difference. Because here's Rebecca Allen. What does the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter bill do that we want our senators to know? Yes, very good question. Okay, so there's an appropriations bill. Okay, so it passed in the House. Correct me if I'm wrong, Will. It passed in the House, this blocking of funding for this horrific high-speed slaughter program. But it somehow didn't get into the Senate bill. So now the Senate and the Congress and the House meet, and they work out the appropriations bill so that they match, and then they submit it to the president for signature. So we want to make sure that the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision is in there, because that would block the funding for the high-speed slaughter. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's exactly right, Jane. And essentially, you know, there are some specific details of the amendment that are probably important to mention. And what's happening right now is the Office of the Inspector General is actually reviewing the analysis that went into the USDA proposing this rule. And so I mentioned earlier that there were some risk assessments done about food safety, and there were some questions raised about the validity of that assessment. So the Office of Inspector General is conducting an audit or an investigation into some of the data that went into that bill. And what the DeLauro-Price Amendment is essentially doing is saying, remove funding to prevent the USDA from implementing this high-speed slaughter rule until that OIG, that Office of Inspector General investigation, is complete, and they can fully validate, you know, the data and the circumstances around the bill, and also until all of their issues have been addressed. So essentially what it's doing is saying, hey, there's some questions about the data that went into justifying this high-speed slaughter rule. We want to let the Office of the Inspector General finish their investigation, finish seeing whether there's actually anything valid, you know, in the data, whether it's a legitimized rule, and then address any concerns. And so that's what the amendment would do. It would remove the funding until that Office of Inspector General report is complete and all of their concerns have been addressed. And the thought is that once all of that happens, people will be able to look at the real data and say, there is no justification for this rule, whether it's from an animal welfare perspective, a food safety perspective, a worker's perspective. There's no justification whatsoever. So very good question.
Yes, excellent question. And once again, we really need people to call now, okay? And I hope that Compassion Over Killing also shares out this video, because it's good to have a backup reminder to your members. You know, one of the problems is we're all getting a lot of emails. And I jumped on this because I could tell immediately, of all the emails I get, this was the most important. And it's so horrifying. And I really wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't do something to try to stop it. And so I know you've been way on top of this, and you have really put out to all of your members, who are many thousands to call. But sometimes they need that extra little oomph, because we live in a busy world where, you know, I was just walking my dog today and I saw that everybody was on their phone. And I was like, it's a beautiful day and everybody's walking around, walking their dogs on their phone. We're overwhelmed and over inundated with information. So how do you stand out? How do you say, of all the things that are happening in the world today, this one thing, okay? And there are many, many terrible things happening, but this one thing will horrifically impact more animals than anything else happening in the world if it's allowed to go through. I mean, you'll see other countries imitating this. Oh, well, the U.S. does it. Let's do it ourselves. I mean, literally this, if the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision is not included in the appropriations bill, we are wholesale condoning the most horrific medieval torture of animals that you could possibly imagine. You know, when I was in Europe, I think it was Prague, I went to a medieval torture museum and I looked around at some of the things, the racks and the various things that they had there that they used to torture people back in the day. And of course, what it's all designed to say is, what a shock. How could anybody have done that? But they did it. They did it. They pull people apart, literally. And it was barbaric and it was medieval. Well, this is barbaric and medieval. And you can stop it. You watching at home. As I was about to say, you never know if you're the call that is going to make the difference. We don't know how many senators and how many members of Congress, at least I don't, are in favor of this provision. But there could be a very close vote. And then it's just maybe one person, one member of Congress, one senator who makes that push, and he or she wouldn't have made that push if your call hadn't come in. So, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jane, I just wanted to make maybe a point of emphasis for folks that are watching. And so we've been on this call for about 40 minutes. And so under the current line speed rules, some of the plants with accelerated caps are killing about a pig every 3 seconds, or say a pig every 20 pigs every minute. So in the 40 minutes that we have been on this call, one plant under the current rules theoretically could have killed 800 pigs. Okay. And so take off those line speed caps, and then you have however many plants killing more than 800 pigs in the 40 minutes we've been on. And so every minute that ticks by, pigs are being killed. And I think the point of emphasis is that, you know, this is so important. Those numbers increase. Not only do the numbers increase, but the cruelty increases. And so for every one of those pigs, you can watch the video our great investigators did at COK.net. Every one of those pigs has to go through the process. They get pushed and they get shoved and they get pushed down a chute. There's stunning that happens. In many cases, we witnessed that stunning was done improperly. You know, the pigs are pushed down the line. They may be sensible when they get their throat slit. They may be sensible when they go into the scalding tank. That happens over and over and over again. That's not just one instance. Like I said, in the time we've been on the call, things like that have happened to 800 pigs per plant. Take off those limits and just think of the egregious cruelty that will happen. So there's a definite urgency and importance to people making these calls today.
Yeah, and guess what? We have another call that came in that says right here, I just had it. Wow, somebody just put in a long war and peace, but thank you. I'm sure your heart's in the right place. I don't know what happened there. Oh, here we go. She just called. Anyway, somebody just called. Here it is. I called Senator John Cornyn's office. I hope others do too. So that is super, super important. Of course, none of this would be happening if people didn't eat animals. And we all know, you know, that that's unnecessary and indeed bad for our health. And I just reached out to somebody from Compassion Over Killing saying, hey, why don't you share this video? Because you have a lot of people who are members of your organization that could also watch. Oh, we've got another one. Christy DeMario called Feinstein's office. She's a big supporter of animals and the safety of our food system. Yes, you know, people, they want to hear from you. This notion that somehow we're bothering them is really wrong. Here, Mike Wolf says, thank you for taking the time to talk about this. This rule directly increases the suffering of animals. Compassion Over Killing's investigator was told directly by a supervisor that the workers at the plant did not have the time to move the pigs properly. So they were abusing the downer pigs more in order to get them to move more quickly. Now, comment on that as the attorney for Compassion Over Killing. I cannot even imagine the horror of you're a downer pig, which means that you are already suffering extraordinary suffering. You are too sick to walk. But in order then to get you killed, let me just say me. I'm a downer pig. I'm too sick to walk. I've been abused my whole life. I was ripped away from my mother. If I'm a boy, I was castrated without anesthesia. I was branded with they spray paint them when they're set to die. I mean, it's a horror show to begin with. And now, because of the high-speed slaughter, we're going to torture you more in your final seconds of life because we got to move you along faster and you can't walk. So we got to drag you while you're squirming. I saw the video that you're referring to. I saw Compassion Over Killing's undercover video of the pig squirming. In fact, I included it in my documentary, Countdown to Year Zero, which is on Amazon Prime now, and you can watch the entire documentary, which focuses on animal agriculture's impact on climate change. Also, the horrors of animal agriculture. But let's talk about these downers.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I think the most compelling thing for people to do would be to watch the video. There's some extremely compelling clips in the video of what are referred to as downer pigs. And if you think about, an animal in that situation that can't walk, it might have an illness or a sickness. In some of the clips, you can see animals that look like they're foaming at the mouth. They simply can't stand up. They're too weak. And then amplify that sort of with them being subjected to cruelty. I mean, we have situations where the plant is actually dragging downer pigs with metal hooks in the mouth. And you can watch that in the video, just being pulled across the floor, being kicked or prodded. There's clips in there about animals being beaten with what are called rattle paddles, where it's supposed to be, the member's supposed to shake them to get the pig to move, but they're just egregiously beating these animals. And so it's bad enough for a normal pig that can walk, but when you talk about a downer pig, you could just think of the magnitude of suffering if you physically cannot do what you are being forced to do, and you lay there and you're beaten and you're dragged with a hook. And so the other thing to add to that is that, I mentioned earlier some of the other changes to the pig slaughter. There are provisions in there that would actually remove some of the what we call ante-mortem inspection provisions. And what that means is that the plant itself would be responsible for identifying downer pigs and removing them. And so you've essentially lost oversight. You've lost oversight from the USDA, where they're not looking to see, is this a downer pig? Should it be removed? You have plant employees that are actually removing them before the USDA gets involved. And so you've then lost whatever minimal oversight might already exist. And so your point is well taken. It's just an amplification of the existing cruelty that's inherent to any animal in industrial factory farming.
Yeah, so we'll continue this till the top of the hour if you're willing to stay. I know you're busy, Will. You're a busy attorney for Compassion Over Killing, which is a great organization. But I feel we have people watching. We have people saying they're going to call. And what I really want to emphasize myself is that I know that when people say, yes, I will call today, then something happens with the kids, the car, the job, the shopping, the whatever, and all of a sudden, oh, the day's over. Oh, well, the offices are closed. It's too late. No. If you care about animals, I am telling you right now, stop what you're doing. Stop watching this video and call your members of Congress, your Congress member and your 2 U.S. senators. If you know the U.S. senators' names, which hopefully you do, but if you don't, no judgment. There are days where I haven't had my second cup of coffee and I'm like, who are my senators? My senators are Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris. But you could literally then just Google, for example, Dianne Feinstein phone number, and then the number comes up immediately. So that's the first thing you can do. Now, there's also a map that we are putting the link up so that right here, Erica Meyer, the head of Compassion Over Killing, is putting up the map, the link right here. You could just use that link to find your member of Congress and your U.S. senators. And the point is to do it now, not to do it later. Now is the time. When you see horrors that happen in civilization, and you wonder, how is it possible that this happened? How is it possible that good people allowed this horror, this evil to triumph? They did nothing. They said, oh, I'll call later. I'll call later. I'm busy now. I got to walk the dog. I got to feed the kids. I got to get to work. No. Right now, the most important thing you can do is take 4 minutes. I bet you can do it under 4 minutes, because I did it in under 5 minutes easy, to call your 2 U.S. senators and to call your member of Congress and say, high-speed slaughter is pure evil. I am urging your boss, the U.S. senator or the member of Congress, to pass the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision in the appropriations bill that they are working on right now, because if America allows this high-speed slaughter, it will be the beginning of the end of our civilization. You know, you could hear about civilizations in the past that rose and fell. And when did they begin falling? They began falling when they reached a level of moral decadence where anything went. In other words, they became morally bankrupt. And if we allow this high-speed slaughter to go through here in the United States of America, we will have officially become completely morally bankrupt. And we can't just point the finger, because you can make the call. You can stop it. So again, we are almost out of time. We have 9 more minutes. I would like to hear from somebody else who has made the call. Rebecca Allen says, I called Senator Ted Cruz's office, and the woman who answered was very nice. When I told her how terrible it was, I felt like she heard. She said she would pass it on. She even asked, was that happening now? Please call your senator. Now, you can give yourself nightmares by watching the video, but you could do something else. Take my word for it. It is literally one of the worst things you'll ever see. It's horrific. And you can just find out who your U.S. senators and your members of Congress are and call them. This is the moment of truth. In a society, there are moments where either people do the right thing or the society really begins to crumble. And honestly, I firmly believe we're at that moment now. We know that there are other terrible things happening, but I would say in terms of sheer suffering and torture, this is perhaps the worst thing we are doing in terms of moral bankruptcy in the United States of America today. And there are plenty of awful other things being done to children, etc. It's horrible, and I condemn them. And I would love to be able to just make a call to end that. The good news here is that there is something you can do. Often we feel helpless. And obviously, the first thing is not eat pigs. But the second thing immediately is to call your representatives to approve the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision. Call your members of Congress now. Call your U.S. senators and your Congress members right now. So let me ask you a question. Why is it that Compassion Over Killing is taking the lead on this specific issue?
So we've a couple things there. So one, there are most definitely a number of animal groups involved. I mean, this is something that has broad support across the animal world. I mean, you have basically all of the animal groups are pushing and rallying against this. I think for COK, it's very personal. You know, we had an investigator that went into a plant that was conducting high-speed slaughter. They've not only seen it, I mean, that investigator had to deal with the physical, emotional strains of being in that situation. And they did that to expose this footage so that people can see it and people can hopefully act. And so, you know, you've mentioned the footage and it is graphic footage, you know, but I do think it's important for people to see. Otherwise, we get to a sense where, you know, words and laws are essentially just black and white on a piece of paper. But words and laws have impact and they have meaning. And COK's investigator was brave enough to go into that plant to document that information so that the public could see it. And so that's sort of our personal investment. You know, as an organization, we're obviously committed to ending cruelty to factory farmed animals. And to your other point, you know, there's another action people can take, which is just stop eating meat, stop eating dairy products. But aside from that, you can take a very quick action today, call your senator, call your representative. But to your question, there's a lot of groups involved in sort of backing this amendment, but for COK, it's definitely very personal because our investigator has witnessed it firsthand to capture that footage and to bring it to people so that the world can sort of see the horrors that are going on in a plant like this.
And when you look at that pig right there, ask yourself, if that pig were your dog, okay, or your cat, and that pig was about to be tortured, dragged, because the next image is that pig who can't get up being dragged with a hook through its mouth while it squirms, let's get Sarah Segal on this case. Terri Lewis wants to know Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris's phone number. I know that, Sarah, you can Google those and put those up right away. In fact, I could probably Google them. From now on, I'm going to have them in my phone book so that I can just, call my U.S. senators who work for me anytime. So Kamala Harris, United States Senator, phone number, contact right here. Kamala Harris contact. I'm going to do that official page and the contact. Well, here's the Twitter. Let me ask you a couple of other questions. Anyway, getting back to this pig. If that pig were your dog or cat, what would you do to stop that poor animal from being hooked by the mouth and dragged squirming on the ground to his or her death? Would you make a phone call? Would you? We take our dogs to the vet when they're sick. We give them medicine. We go to extreme lengths. Can you at least make a phone call for this pig? Okay? And the brothers and sisters, just like her, who are being tortured by the millions, can you please? Okay, so first of all, I want to say that my biggest heroes in life are the undercover investigators. I do not know how they do it. I feel like they are the biggest heroes on the planet because they have to go in there and experience this, not just once, but day in and day out for months, taking the risk of undercover footage, carrying cameras on them, okay? And they have to participate. They have to act like a worker in order to document this. They are the most heroic people that I have ever met. So I just want to give a shout out to the undercover investigators. Every time I meet them, wow, well done, Sarah Segal. She's got the phone number for Kamala Harris, and I'm sure she's going to come up with the phone number for Senator Dianne Feinstein in a second. 202-224-3553. That is the number you can call if you're in California. Call Senator Kamala Harris right now. Now, I want to ask you a question as we're getting to the last 3 minutes. What about tweeting? What about Instagram? What are we doing there?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure I have a good answer to that. Are you asking what COK is doing with respect to that? Or?
Can people tweet? I think it would be a great idea to tweet Senator Kamala Harris official, go to her Instagram and, comment about this. Go to her Twitter, tweet a tweet storm. I think we need a tweet storm right now.
Yeah, I don't think anything that's going to raise visibility. I mean, even if the senator doesn't get that specific message, I think the nature of Twitter and social media is that other people will see it and somebody might look at it and say, oh, what's this high-speed pig slaughter, and educate themselves. And so at this point in time, I don't think there's any sort of publicity or any effort to raise awareness that would be harmful. I mean, obviously, would be best to call and get directly in there, but anything that raises exposure to keep this issue from being swept under the rug would be helpful at this point.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much as we wrap up. We have Senator Kamala Harris's number and Senator Dianne Feinstein's number. So everyone in California, in the comment section, it's right there. So we're going to put that up right now. Hold on as we wrap up here. Great work, Sarah Segal. Here we go. Terri Lewis said, got it. There you go. Diane Feinstein, 202-224-3841. Kamala Harris, 202-224-3553. There are the numbers, and they are on the comment section, so you can see them at any time. I would really urge you to make these calls. I'm not even going to urge you. I'm telling you, make the call. Make the call. Make the call. Okay, this is the moment of truth. You love animals. Take this action now. All you have to do is call your U.S. senators, there's 2 of them, and call your member of Congress and say, stop the high-speed slaughter. It's barbaric. It's evil. And there's a way to do it. Pass the DeLauro-Price Pig Slaughter Provision, which is the provision that would go into the appropriations bill and block the funding for this nightmare. Thank you so fast. I so appreciate, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time, Will Lowrey, attorney for the amazing organization Compassion Over Killing, which did the undercover investigation that has broken this story. And we will keep you posted here on Jane Unchained, but we need to stop this. This cannot happen. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having us, Jane. Thanks to everybody for making the calls. Take care.
Take care.